politics in this bailout bill in order to try to get members to vote for it. I mean, that's what happened.
So the kid Arabic, what is it?
I still don't know what that was about, but it wasn't.
Then it's just a
Well,
typo.
another rum was tax breaks for rum, by the way. Because, you have a hell of a party with the arrows.
Now, I'm trying to get all the time right. I want to ask you. Oh, hello.
Can I pull out a question?
Yeah, do. You've got a question. Well, let me put the next question on. Yeah.
Is it true your brother's running for state senate, Gary? Gary, stand up, okay? Attacking Gary and trying to...
The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Gary, hello.
And so the Republicans are
Good
running...
luck, don't screw up the name.
As a dyslexic person, I was scared of your name because of the sound.
It took me years to learn how to
E's.
pronounce it.
It's actually quite simple. As soon as you know that C is pretending to be an S. Percentage. You see, C's pretend to be S's or K's. I've studied this. If you were, I'm arguing for the, you know, I would be quite happy, like THs and all that thruff, and, you know, the way that we pronounce all these words. I mean, this is not important. You don't need to get political. But C's pretend to be K's or S's. Yeah, C's pretend to be K's or S's. We don't need a C. Except for ch. Except for the ch sound.
What do you think of murmur diphthongs, actually?
I'm against. Okay. Right. So okay. Well, I want to talk about your early life. It was tough. Yeah, as a kid growing up. How many? 6 kids?
7.
7 kids.
The oldest is 7.
And your dad was.
Well, my dad was a truck driver. The family kept growing, and as you went from 1 to 2 to 3, and you're renters, not homeowners, it's tough to find a place to rent. I mean, there were times that my dad would go to the door and they'd ask how many kids are there, and we'd have 5 of us waiting in the car, and they'd say 3, and I'd say, okay, you 2 stay here until I close the deal. And so 2 of us, or 3, sometimes 3 of us would hide behind the car until we secured the apartment, and then, ran up the back stairs, and we had a place until the landlord knocked on the door one day and saw there were a lot of kids there. We went through that. There were times, we lived in 21 different places by the time I was 17, including a couple cars. And so you get, it helps you develop a sense of humor, but also a sense of compassion about what people go through.
You would do 7 kids and 2 in a car? Or
5 of us were living in, my mom and dad and 5 kids lived in a car at one time. That's right.
Wow.
Not too far.
What kind of?
Well, it was a Dodge. It was, I think it was about a 49 Dodge.
Yeah. And you had to arrange...
Nice carpeting.
Yeah.
Really welcome.
Did you put the heater on?
Yeah, they had the heater on.
Yeah, that's without the heater.
It's very nice. When you're a kid, you don't really pay attention to that. I mean, kids are amazingly resilient. They put up with anything. I just, for my mom and dad, it was not very much.
And you had to arrange sometimes the accommodation. You had to sort this out.
Well, I would, I learned how to read when I was 3 years old, so I could go through the newspaper and kind of, by the time I was 7, 8, we're driving around looking for places, I could go through the newspaper and say, well, here, it says children. Then they would have ads in the paper that say no children, or 1 child only. So I'd comb through the ads and see where it looked like we might be able to stop and try to find a place. It was always an adventure. Gary and I learned a lot from that, and I feel very fortunate actually to be able to do what I do and to have come from circumstances that a lot of people may not have had a chance to get behind.
So a Catholic upbringing? But also you were pro-life until 2002, then you moved to a pro-choice position. And does that come out of a Catholic upbringing?
Well, abortion has become kind of a wedge issue in politics. Let me tell you how I looked at it. I mean, as a Catholic, I do have a profound respect for life. And at the same time, as I began to you know, the issue became debated more and more in Congress, and I was talking to more and more women about it, particularly women in my life, they would tell me, well, you know, it's not like we're for abortion, we just want control over our own bodies. We don't want the government trying to tell us that we can or can't. And I started to, you know, in listening, because I think that in politics, you have to be careful assuming that the moment you start your career that you have all the received wisdom in the world. You have to stay open to hear what people have to say. So as I listened to women in my life, including my daughter, I started to hear something else, and started to hear about some of the concerns that they had about having government be in a position of passing laws that would make abortion illegal. So, you know, I don't favor. I've never told anyone to go get an abortion. I wouldn't do that. That's a deeply personal decision that someone has to make. And to have the government intervene and try to dictate that decision, I think is a very dangerous thing. But that's not sufficient. Having understood how people feel about not wanting to support abortion, not wanting to encourage it, I understand that. Understanding people's heart on that. And it's a heartfelt position that many people have. But what I've come to this understanding, and that is, we can work to create a country where we make abortions less necessary through prenatal care, postnatal care, child care, universal health care, and a living wage. This is one of those issues where we really have to be careful about taking a judgmental approach and try to approach it in a compassionate and healing way. It's a very serious matter. It shouldn't be trifled with politically. And so, you know, I understand that for some people this is a bottom line issue. I understand that. But I also feel that in my capacity as a member of Congress, there are many different points of view about this in my constituency, and that I'm trying to approach it from a standpoint of compassion and fairness, and hopefully we'll have a society which sustains life at its fullest. You know, the death penalty, war, all these things are part of the same arc of do we really respect the fullness of life? This is a tough one, though. You know, I don't pretend that I have any final answers.
In America, I've noticed that, I don't know how I get the question out of this statement, but I've noticed that if you, and I've said this on the radio, that if you're running for politics, you've really got to be coming from a religious point, not religious point of view, but you've got to have religion with you, and you need to really be a believer, probably in the Christian religion, probably, I mean, and in Europe, I feel it's almost exactly opposite. If you say that you are religious, then people will find that unusual, and if you start talking about, thank God for this and that, it's considered almost a liability. Would you say it's fair, the first thing I said, that you really need to be a religious person to be?
Well, it's how you define it. I wouldn't use the word religious. I mean, there's God, there's talk about, you know, the rights of people, and, you know, and deriving, you know, not from man. And so you have to understand that America derived from spiritual values without commitment to any particular religion, so that people could basically pursue their own way.
Right.
So I think that the danger in our politics is when a particular religion starts to say, well, it has to be this way. That's when you have tensions and conflict in a society. But I think we have to have a nation that is respectful of people's beliefs and their non-beliefs, that's respectful of the spirit that really penetrates everything. You know, whether you believe or not is one thing. But the founders had a sense that there was something transcendent about this country. There was some connection that this country had with something that was very profound. And, you know, whether you want to call it God or not is another story. But if you look at something as concrete